the outcome, you have to control both sides. And that's why, when you're investigating this, you don't just look at the fors or against something, which is in line with the agenda. You look at those who are on the other side of the debate, because they want to control the debate by controlling them, and by controlling the debate, they control the outcome. So, example. The Bush family and the Clinton family are supposed to be opposing each other politically, because one's a Democrat and one's a Republican. Why then, as I've exposed in my books, and people who knew them have exposed from their own experience, that these families are like that and go back a long, long time. During the Reagan-Father Bush administration, the Bush family and the Clinton family, Clinton was then governor of Arkansas, were running drugs, a massive operation, through somewhere called the Mena airstrip in Arkansas, which was part of the Iran-Contra thing. They go back a very long way. From 1980, when Reagan-Bush came in and Father Bush was the real president in terms of power, right through to now, in 2008, a Bush or a Clinton has been in the presidency. And they are two masks on the same face. The president is a puppet controlled by the forces that put him there, that funded him there with the cuckoo amounts of money they give. Cheney is more powerful in the White House than boy George Bush. Why? Because Cheney's higher in the hidden hierarchy. And this is the point. The higher you are in the hidden hierarchy doesn't translate necessarily to the hierarchy we see in the public arena with presidents and vice presidents. But the power hierarchy in the public arena does mirror the power hierarchy in the hidden agenda. This man has been president. This man's been running America. Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we. So if he's not been running America, who has? And then, this is another way where the debate kind of diverts people. I've been hearing for the last 8 years, before Blair left office, Bush controls Blair. Bush can't tie his shoelaces without help. Bush controls Blair. No. The reason Blair has not been able to cough without asking through his period in office before Brown took over is because the same shadow people have been controlling Bush as have been controlling Blair, and that's why you can't get a cigarette paper between their policies and their actions. Nothing to do with Bush control. Bush controlling Blair, he can't control himself. And now, Hillary Clinton, John McCain, Barack Obama stands for change you can believe in. These people are controlled by the same force. Interesting, you know, when Clinton came in, Bill Clinton in, 92, he kept talking all the way through his election campaign. Change, I stand for change. He's going on, Obama. Change, I stand for change. Why? Why do they play that game? Interesting. Because of the way the system stitches up people, denies them choice, denies them equilibrium, happiness, and all these things, and what they desire. At any point in time, the vast majority of people are not happy with their status quo. So anyone who comes along and says, I stand for change, oh yeah, anything's better than this, yes mate, change. Very powerful because of that situation. Now, Barack Obama, his main man, and it's not just in this election, it goes back a long time, is a guy called Zbigniew Brzezinski. Brzezinski was the national security advisor in the Carter administration, and he went public in the last year, 18 months or so, admitting that he in that position, worked to manipulate the Soviet Union to invade Afghanistan because he wanted to weaken the superpower, and in his words to the effect of, I wanted to create for them their Vietnam. It didn't matter that he did that, except that that invasion cost 1 million Afghan lives. It matters nothing to these people. They don't have empathy with the consequences of their actions for others like we have empathy. Empathy is a fail-safe mechanism for human behavior. Take it away and there are no limits. And as a result of that invasion, he and those that followed him in the Reagan-Bush administration and British military organizations too, trained tens of thousands of people in Pakistan, where the intelligence agency, the ISI, is the CIA Pakistan branch, to fight the invasion and resist it, to cause the Russians as much problem as possible. They are the people. They're now saying we have to take our freedoms away to stop them harming us. The people they trained, not just in Pakistan, but also in America. I'll say no more except this, about this. Well, I might, because got verbal diarrhea, but if anyone thinks, David Davis or anybody else, that when this guy, David Cameron, the Conservative leader, comes into government, as we stand, he absolutely is almost certain to do. If David Davis or anyone thinks that Big Brother is going to be turned back by this guy and his cohorts, then again, you know, just down the road from the one in the seafront property in Switzerland, I have another little one you might like to look at. Because the agenda does not take no for an answer. You always know when it's the agenda, because when it's rejected by the people, they keep coming back with it. And this whole global Big Brother agenda is not going to go any further in Britain, or is going to be turned back by David Cameron. Crikey, you're having a laugh. Of course not. They'll find the excuses for it, and it'll be business as bloody usual. This is very true, I find. Politics may not be the oldest profession, but the results are the same. Now, people don't realise just how simple it is for these shadow groups, a group in the end, to manipulate who goes into government in a democracy. Piece of cake. This is how it's done. You might recognise this if you've followed politics in Britain for the last 20 or 30 years. Most countries have one or two parties, sometimes one, South Africa, but mostly two parties that have any chance of forming a government. All you have to do to get the party in, i.e., because it's not a party thing, they're just vehicles, in other words, the leadership in that you want, is to cause mayhem in the party you don't want. And then people say, well, I don't really want to vote for these people, but look, what's the alternative? Go and vote for them. Oh, they're in. During the Thatcher era, there was lots of people who didn't want to vote for Margaret Thatcher. But look at the Labour Party. It was in disarray, it was internal conflict. Leaders came to power who you wouldn't let run a fish and chip shop. And people were saying, oh, I don't want Margaret Thatcher, but look at the alternative. So the Conservatives were in right the way through the 80s when she introduced Thatcherism, which was a mirror of the economics called Reaganomics that was being introduced at the same time in America. Just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. Then the chosen one appeared through the ether. Tony Blair, after John Major had become Prime Minister. The moment chosen one Blair came to lead the Labour Party, Murdoch's newspapers in this country switched to the Labour Party and Blair for the first time. And what happened to the Conservative Party? Internal conflict, mayhem, leaders that people didn't find credible, and leaders who the public were told not to find credible. What happened? 10 years of Blair. Despite lying blatantly, outrageously, grotesquely about going into Iraq. And despite all that, he got in, what, 3 times? What were people saying? Well, I don't like Blair, but look at the alternative. And now Gordon Brown's come in to replace Blair without a vote. Blair stepped down. What's happening to Brown now? A systematic demolition of him and his party is happening. Why? Because Cameron is designed to come in with his cohorts to take the Big Brother state on a bit further. Sorry, David Davis, you're going to have to live with it. Unless we decide we're not going to live with it, because the power is with us, not them, if we only took it. So the world seems very confusing. Let's see how they do it here. The world seems very confusing, a ball of confusion and what's going on. And the reason it seems like that is because we're denied, not least through the Quentin Letts of this world, we are denied the coordinates necessary to understand how the pieces fit. The coordinates are about where they want to take the world and the methods they use to take us there. Once we've got these coordinates, the world looks very different. This election looks very different. Coordinate 1. The goal is a centrally controlled global fascist dictatorship. This image can be found in this book, the first edition of which I wrote in 1994. Look at the world as it's emerged since in relation to that. Why do they want this structure? Any dictatorship must centralize power and must bring the decision-making process into the hands of fewer and fewer people. Because the more diversity of decision-making you have, the less control a centre is going to have over those decisions. Diversity is the worst nightmare of the dictator. Uniformity is the means through which they do it. I mean, just look at the world from a built environment perspective. No matter where you go in the world, it all looks the same. This uniformity is emerging, even on that level. So what they want is a world government which would dictate all major policies to every country. They want a world central bank that would control the whole of global finance for every country. They want a world currency which would not in the end be physical cash, but electronic money only. And there are fundamental implications for freedom in that. We are hurtling towards the cashless society. Oh, it's a good thing. Yes. If it was done benignly, it might be, but it ain't. It's the outcome and the reason for the outcome we need to focus on, not the actual thing itself necessarily so much. Today, if you go into a shop or whatever and you hand over electronic money, a credit card, and they say, sorry, the computer won't accept your card, at least you can still say, oh, well, I'll pay cash then. What happens when there is no cash and that computer says, no way, Jose? You have no means of purchase. What does that mean? Total control. That's why it's there. They want a world army. And what I'm saying is all in these books from 15, nearly 20 years ago. A world army that would impose the will of the world government. I had a journalist said to me once, what would they want a world army for? There'd be no one to fight. I said, you're a journalist, aren't you?